What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It's Monday, August 31st. Football is upon us, and so is gambling week. We did fantasy week last week. We did analytics week the week before, and now we're going to do gambling week. We're going to look at the NFL season from a gambling perspective because people like to gamble. People love to gamble. People also like fantasy football, and if you want a lot of insight on fantasy football, may I recommend you check out the debut, which is happening today, of a brand new podcast from CBS Sports. For more than a decade, Fantasy Football Today has been delivering league-winning analysis and advice. Now they're coming at you fast with a brand new feed. Don't worry, the old one will stay the same. It's called the Fantasy Football Today in 5 podcast, and it's your audio outlet for fantasy news and advice in 5 minutes or less. The FFT crew will break down what matters most to help you win your league in a quick-hitting format. Available first thing in the morning, Monday through Friday. Download and subscribe to Fantasy Football Today in 5 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, your smart speakers, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Joining me today to break down some win totals and look at gambling stuff for the second time, RJ White. RJ, can you imagine me doing a 5-minute podcast?
I could, but, I don't know who would listen to it because you would never get around to whatever the topic of the 5-minute podcast is.
It would just be like record for 5 minutes and cut off.
It would be, talking about beer or what happened to you in traffic that day. And then you're like, all right, we had to bump our guests, see you next time.
So maybe tomorrow we'll talk some football. Thanks for listening to the Pick Six podcast. Pick Six, it'd be 6 minutes, I guess, for the Pick Six podcast. Today we're going to talk some win totals. Dive right into football. I'm not going to mess around and let 5 minutes go by. So we mentioned this. Was it 2 weeks ago? I think. Where are you feeling like football's here? The lack of preseason is screwing me up. I need the preseason in my life. It's really messing with me.
Yeah, at this point I am. When we talked, I was just getting into the prep. I delayed the prep because, you could and you just didn't know what was going to happen with these rosters and these rules. But after that point when we talked, I just started diving into things. And for this podcast, did a lot more research and for the last few weeks. So now it really feels there. I don't know if it feels 10 days away, since we're going to get that first game next Thursday. But I definitely feel ready for football at this point.
By the way, people can check out, we did a whole best bet series on cbssports.com, and you collected all the information from all our different writers. I actually haven't looked at the article yet, but I'm about to dive into it and open it up because I'm curious. One, did you order it based on how they came into you? Did you order it based on seniority, alphabetical? What'd you do?
No, I knew if I tried to order our writers by name, I would, run the risk of making somebody mad that they were too low, and especially Brinson. I would have put Brinson in the top 3 and he still would have argued with me. He should have been above Pete. So, what I did is broke it down by teams because I figured everybody wants to see how their team factored in. So I split everybody's write-ups. We told everybody to just submit a paragraph of all 3 teams that they're picking in one. And what I did is I kind of pieced everything together. So the 3 people that took the Cardinals are at the top, because Arizona comes first. Then whoever picked Atlanta is second, and then it goes through like that. So if you want to go check out the article and just see where your team ranked, just head over to cbssports.com, and then you can quickly scroll down to your team and see what we think about them.
I like this. This is a good way to set it up. So will we be getting more articles with the MVP picks and all that rolling out along the?
Yeah, one every day. We did win total starting today to coincide with our talk, and then we'll get division and playoff odds. Your best picks for each of those on Tuesday. Then Wednesday we're going to talk about Super Bowl. Your best pick for the Super Bowl plus your best value pick if you want to dive deeper and take a little lottery pick in the 20 to 30 to 40 to 1, however you want to do it. Then we go MVP and awards on Thursday, and then Friday we'll wrap up with everybody's one best bet for week 1. We'll be about a week away from football then. So the one bet we're looking at. And the interesting thing is, these are all in, so I know who all the picks are. And there was a very disparate submission for all those. And when you look at the win totals, I think 4 or 5 people took the Cowboys, and there were some in the Super Bowl picks. The Steelers emerged as a value pick. A lot of people are kind of picking a lot of these same teams. When you look at week 1, nobody really agreed on best bets. I think there might have been a double up on 1 or 2 picks, but it's a lot of different things there. So we're all seeing different things when we look at the board for week 1 at this point.
Yeah, there's some consensus here, but let's get to those win totals. Oh, Breach and I have a couple similar ones. It's funny when you see, oh my goodness, there were Well, we'll get to it in a second, but there were 6 people who had a pick on the Denver Broncos. That is wild.
And the interesting thing about that is it was split 3-3. Like there wasn't an agreement on that. The Broncos were the most popular pick, but we had 3 overs and 3 unders. So it wasn't like you can take our advice and run to the books and bet something on it. Everybody has an opinion on the Broncos. We just don't have the same opinion.
Although I think you could look at who took which things and maybe say, all right, this guy's kind of square, like Wilson and Prisco, like anyway. Let's get to the teams. So we'll start with your likes. And as we noted before, you're probably not betting these for the full season because you're not going out to Vegas this year because of COVID-19 concerns. But are you doing it through any side channels?
No comment on side channels. We don't talk about things. Florida is not a legal betting state, so we don't talk about anything like that.
I will take that as a firm yes. Thank you, RJ. But all right, so look, and you've done very well on your win totals in the years past. So I would highly recommend people tail these, I guess. But with the caveat, of course, that we need to get 16 games for these to count, and you need to make sure that your book says 16 games, so the rules are in place, et cetera, et cetera. What is your favorite bet of the year?
So I have 6 teams that I like, and I think out of those, my favorite, I like to go unders more than overs, just because and I've said in this podcast in the past, the books bake more wins that are actually possible into the board. So you can only have 256 wins in an NFL season, best case scenario. And I say best case because ties, you don't get a half for a tie. If a 2 teams tie, that both goes down as a loss. So when you're talking about win totals, because you got to get to the win number. Right. So 256 is your max, and the books tend to have 260, 262, something like that. Over at William Hill right now, it's 261 wins in the system. So it's just a little bit easier to hit unders than it is overs. So if you're looking for value and you're kind of torn on 2 teams that you want to bet on, one's an over, one's an under, I would recommend going with the under. So my favorite under right now is probably Cleveland at 8.5 minus 110. I mean, 8.5 is an aggressive number for a team that had 6 wins last season, has a completely new coaching staff in place in a COVID environment where they didn't get the normal, prep for the season in the practice. So we don't know what we're going to see coming into the season with them. I think that O-line could take time to come together with 2 new tackles. I think the D-line has a lot of talent, but I don't know that they're completely satisfied with who they have on the D-line, because we found out Ngakoue got traded to the Vikings, but we found out the Browns were in serious consideration to trade for him as well. So they're not completely comfortable with what they have on the edge. That is what that tells you. And I'm not really sold on the next 2 levels of the defense. They're dealing with the injury to Mac Wilson. I don't know. He wasn't a star at linebacker anyway, but the guys behind him aren't going to come out and lock down that position. And then secondary has some issues with injuries for some of the guys. We have safety is a major issue for them. So 8.5 just seems like a lot for a team with a new coaching staff and a team that hasn't had success since who knows how long. And so it seems like we're all just kind of buying into the Cleveland hype again by putting that number that high. So I would go under with the 8.5.
Yeah. So I stand with Cleveland this year. I like Cleveland a lot as a team, and I think that they are undervalued from a fantasy perspective. Like, to me, Baker Mayfield is a good dynasty buy. I think Baker Mayfield is actually a decent MVP sleeper, which you can find in that article. And part of that is built on the idea that Cleveland was so bad with Freddie Kitchens last year that Kevin Stefanski could come in and run a new system, be efficient about how you utilize Baker Mayfield, get him in rollouts. Odell Beckham has a bounce-back season. They add Austin Hooper. Jack Conklin should be able to step right in at right tackle and operate the run game, use a lot of bootlegs, use a lot of play action. I can see a path where they win 10 games and Baker plays really well and he's in the MVP hype and all of that. Having said that, I think no team in the NFL is hurt more by this offseason than the Cleveland Browns. Because, as you point out, new head coach, so new offensive system. You're coming off a disastrous season where everybody took a step back. You had abysmal tackles last year, and you upgraded and did a good job upgrading. But now one of them is a rookie, granted a rookie from a prominent SEC school, and you'd think he'd be able to make the transition fairly well, but he's a rookie at left tackle. That's in a shortened off season. That's a hard spot to be in. And then Conklin, who is, former All-Pro, but still making an adjustment to a new team. Defensively, I think Myles Garrett could be the player of the year. I like a lot of their pieces, but you point out, Mac Wilson, like Joe Schubert left, Mac Wilson. So now you have, questions at linebacker, questions at secondary. And to top it off, you play in a really hard division. I would not have any interest in taking the over on Cleveland at 8.5. At 7.5, or certainly 7 or 6.5. If you were in a normal Brown season and they were being treated as they were back before last year, then I'm all in. I love the Browns over. But I think the Bengals are better. The Ravens are really good, and the Steelers should be improved. I don't know how you take the Browns over. I don't know how you bank on the Browns to win 9 games. I think if anything, maybe you take the Browns to make the playoffs, but then still you're probably the 3rd best team in the division. I just think I really like what Cleveland has done this offseason, but I don't know that I can trust all the new pieces to fall into place in this pandemic shortened offseason. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, it's okay to like Cleveland long term and the what direction they're moving, but it's just hard to see them coming out of the gate and being a strong team, early in the season based on what they're dealing with. So I agree with you there.
Okay. What else do you like? Give me your next. We'll just run through your likes, and then I'll.
Yeah, so I'll just go alphabetical with the likes and let people decide which ones they like. Houston over 8 plus 140. That's an over I do like because you're getting so much price on that juice. They were fortunate to win 10 last year, but they've been over 500 in 5 of Bill O'Brien's 6 seasons and a division winner in 4 or 5. So in 4 of their last 5. So we know that he's bad at the GM job and personnel moves, but he gets out there and he can coach that team to wins. Hopkins, is a star, but Houston still has a lot of depth at receiver. They lost their number 1, but if you go through their top guys, the Cooks, Fuller, Stills, and Cobb, I mean, that's better than a lot of top 4s for a lot of teams. So even losing that, I think they're going to be fine at receiver. And then Watson's the best quarterback in the division by far. And so they have the 3rd best odds, but they have the best quarterback by far. I think you're getting value there. The O-line came together last year. It's been a problem for so many years. And now it looks like it's stable. They finally come into the year with stability and a reason to be positive about that O-line. And then the defense might be an issue, but they do have talent. Who knows if they add a little bit to the defense? I mean, John Reed's a good guy down at a safety. It's a highly talented player. So I don't know what they're going to do at corner. I think they might have some questions at rush, opposite of Merciless. But this is a team in a division that typically we don't think is going to be that strong that could come out and win the division. I like their odds to win the division as well, but plus 140 over 8 when they've had success in the last 5 or 6 years is really good price for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bill O'Brien as a GM is trash. But as a coach, he just gets the most out of his team, even though sometimes I'm watching him, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you running this offense like this? Why are you forcing the ball to Carlos Hyde? Why don't you like DeAndre Hopkins? There's so many different reasons. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. 8 wins. I do think that one of the issues that I would have with this Houston team is that it feels like there are a couple of stars on the roster with Deshaun Watson. Maybe we count Will Fuller, J.J. Watt, Laramie Tunsil. We're like, if all of a sudden, they don't perform up to snuff or injuries happen, and we've seen that. Watson's torn his ACL at the pro level. Of course, we've seen J.J. Watt has been banged up a lot in the past. If there's some Jenga pieces here, it feels like, where if something goes wrong injury-wise, there's not as much stability to be able to come back from those injuries.
Right. Yeah. Losing Watt would be bad. We've seen that defense, goes into the tank when he's not in there. I think any team loses their quarterback to injury, then you're screwed, if you're going over a win total. So I'm not too concerned about Watson. We've seen what he's played through in the past. So we know that if he can be out there, he will be out there. But yeah, I do like their depth at receiver. I like what they've done at offensive line, and they've added a little depth there too. And then the defense, it's probably going to be bad, but it was bad last year and they still won 10 games. So all you have to do is come together a little bit. They do have solid talent in inside linebacker. We saw an extension for Cunningham just recently. So they do like some of their pieces there. So it's not a defense where you're going to say they're going to come out and be a top 5 unit, but there is talent, on each level of that defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're betting on a team that has won a bunch of games every single year except for Deshaun Watson's rookie season when he didn't start immediately and then quickly got hurt. So I don't have a problem with it, and it's plus 140. And it's if they win 8 games, they go 500. You push. I don't know.
Sorry, there's a certain thing to add there. I got a question on Twitter saying, would you take the over 8 plus 140 or over 7.5 minus 110? Because I'm sure a lot of people can see some 7.5s out there. I really love that 7.5 minus 110. You're basically playing a flat right there. And you can push when you can get a win on that 8 instead of a push, because the 8 seems to be the key number that people are projecting them around. So definitely go get that 7.5 if you can. Yeah,
you would much rather be able to win $100 after laying 110 if they win 8 games versus needing 9 to win 140. I mean, like your 30 cents is or your 40 cents is important, of course.
Yeah, what I would probably do in that situation is split it 2-1. Like if I'm going to bet,
Oh,
$300 on them, put 200 or 220 or whatever on the -110 on the over 7.5, and then go ahead and go for that higher payout on the plus
I like that.
140.
I like that. Would you have any thought of Houston winning the division?
I do like that too. I particularly like the odds to make the playoffs, since it seems like the AFC wild cards are more wide open than that. But
Wait, what are they to make the playoffs? Is it like plus 135?
I believe it's. Let me check real quick. I don't have my odds, up right now. But
Sorry, that's on me. I can look.
I know they moved at William Hill.
I just Ryan Wilsoned you.
I know they moved at William Hill from plus 300 to win the division to plus 350. So at plus 350 to win the division, I loved, taking that as value if you want to take a higher lottery ticket pick there. But to just make the playoffs, they're plus 155 last time I checked. And yeah, like I said, the wild cards in the AFC, Pittsburgh is going to you'll get two teams out of the AFC North. Baltimore and Pittsburgh will be those two teams. And then really the wild cards from there are open. It could be, we expect Buffalo and New England to make the playoffs, but who knows, if Buffalo has some regression, or if New England, the losses are just too much to deal with. And then, yeah, it could be, you could see anybody. And Houston has just as good a argument to make the playoffs out of any other wild card contender.
Yeah, I'm looking to see. I've got yes, make the playoffs plus 146. Yeah, I'd rather take the 146 versus the 350 to win the division, just because. If you're taking the over at 8 wins, you get to 9 and 7. Good chance to make the playoffs. Very good chance you also get a tiebreaker and lose the division. So
it could be another thing where you split the bet 2-1 too. If you want to go that route, take your safer, plus 146, put your 200 there, and then put 100 on the 350.
It could also be a situation where you're 3 games in, you're like, oh my God, I bet all my life savings on Bill O'Brien. and suddenly the Texans are like, look terrible, or Deshaun Watson is hurt. I was going to look at their schedule. It's impossible to find schedules anymore. Yeah, they get the Chiefs, Ravens, and
they have a tough start.
Chiefs, Ravens, Steelers, Vikings. But you
not great.
2-2 or 3-1, which is not impossible. I mean, they have Deshaun Watson, and all of a sudden you're feeling great about this over.
Yeah, because obviously it gets easier from there. Jacksonville, Tennessee. They played Jacksonville twice, obviously, in that division. They're at Detroit later in the year. They'll have some easier games to come.
I would say too, if you're thinking about betting Houston to win the division, if you've got a book that's going to release division odds, like if you're betting at the Westgate, because they put out NFL odds every single week, you're probably going to get, if the Colts start out hot, or like the Titans start out hot, and the Texans start 0-3, maybe you could wait till week 3 and bet it.
Yeah, definitely going to get better value, a few weeks into the season. So if that's that's a good tactic to take. If you can do that and you have the ability to wait, and you go ahead and make that bet, in late September, you'll be good to go.
And obviously, I'm not suggesting that everybody can do that, because everybody can't do that. What about your next one is close to my heart, because I said that I loved it after I flipped completely on it. The New York Jets, you have to go with the under.
Yeah, under 6.5 minus 130. I don't know what they are on offense. How is Darnold going to develop with that cast? They have, a mishmash of receiving talent. We don't know how Perryman's going to shake out. Mims is a draft pick. We don't think he's going to make a huge impact early on. So it's going to be a lot of passing to Jamison Crowder and hoping for the best. His 7 or 8 yards that he's getting you every time he catches the ball. Le'Veon Bell was a disappointment last year. That offensive line made some improvements, on paper, but we'll see if it comes together. Defense lost its best player, and then Mosley opted out as well. So I don't trust them to stop anyone on defense. They were lucky to win 7 games last year, and this team, as it is constructed, isn't more talented. So I don't see how they get to 7. If everything breaks the same as it did last year. And I know Darnold missed some games, and they played well in the second half of the season, but the talent just isn't there for this team to get to 7 when everybody else in the division is pretty solid.
I have no idea how you can. I like the Jets as a sleeper for a hot minute to win the division and to just be a problem for the people are talking about the Dolphins. I think the Jets could easily finish with more wins than the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins could be a 3 or 4 win team, and the Jets could be a 5 or maybe even 6 win team. But you're right. You trade Jamal Adams. You have an offensive line where all the pieces are new. Jamison Crowder is your best skill position guy. Denzel Mims is a rookie coming in a pandemic shortened offseason. I know I use that phrase all the time. People get sick of it, but it's a reality of the situation. Darnold, the consistency is that he has Adam Gase there, and Gase is already squabbling with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, everything is a mess with this team. The only reason why you would take the over here is just to be a total contrarian who thinks that this is or if you love Sam Darnold and you think Sam Darnold could take a huge leap. And I like Sam Darnold a lot, and I think he could take a leap. I don't know if he takes a leap this year. By the way, they're gonna be in trouble with the contract for him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you are a believer in the Jets and you think Darnold is going to take that big leap, just go over and bet him to win the MVP at 100-1 or whatever it is. I took a lottery ticket on him last year to win MVP, and that fell apart completely when he got mono, and all of a sudden I'm like, how you have that bad luck when you bet on a guy to win MVP and he gets mono of all things for an NFL quarterback. So if you do like him, that would be the route to me. Just go for that lottery ticket and put a little bit on it, and then you can root for the Jets that way.
Yeah, don't take the Jets over. Just don't do it. All right, what's next? How about the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, Pittsburgh over 9 minus 120. So the second over that I have out of this group. They were 31st in points per drive last year during an 8-8 year. That's going to go way up with Ben back, assuming he's healthy. And all accounts, he's looked good, in camp. So I'm expecting their offense to be good. That elite defense is back intact. They brought back all the good players. They'll still be top tier, even if the turnovers come down. They were really high in turnovers, so there's going to be some regression. But even if they're not, elite, top of the number one with a bullet, in the NFL, they're going to be in that top 5, and they're going to be a strong defense. So you put those two things together, you add in coaching stability, and this is the third best team in the AFC to me behind Baltimore and Kansas City. And I don't see why they couldn't challenge Baltimore to win the division as good as Baltimore is. They just have all that stability in place and all that talent and good coaching. So over 9 to me seems like a pretty good lock that they're going to win double digits.
I don't have a problem with it at all. The Steelers are a very good team. They have a very good defense. They have a good offensive line. They have lots of skill position guys. They had Chase Claypool, and people have been – and again, we can't see it, so we don't know. But people have been raving about him at training camp. And that should move Juju Smith-Schuster back to the slot. It all hinges on Ben. If Ben is healthy, then I think that they'll win 10-plus games. And if Ben's not healthy, then I think they'll win 9 or less games. So do you want to gamble on medicals is what it comes down to.
Yeah, and he wasn't healthy last year, and they won 8, with garbage at quarterback. And even if he does get hurt, who knows? Maybe Mason Rudolph takes a small step forward. Maybe Hodges takes a small – whoever the developmental quarterback is going to be the number 2. Maybe something happens there where they can win 9 and get you a push. So most cases when you're taking the over, if a quarterback gets hurt, you can just tear up your ticket. This one they showed they were almost at 9 anyway, even with Ben out basically all year. I mean, when he played in that first 2 weeks, it came out that he wasn't healthy when he played, so he probably shouldn't have played anyway. So, I think you still have a shot at pushing with your 9, even if he gets hurt, because that defense is just so good. Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it, but I don't know. There's just something that seems off about Big Ben. Just seems too easy that he's going to come back and be great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if he's great, they have a shot at the Super Bowl. All he has to do is come back and be good, and that offense is going to be go from 31st in the league to 17, 18 at worst. If he's just
absolute worst.
If he's just solid and that plus that defense, that's going to get you to 10 wins.
All right, we mentioned the Super Bowl team that was there last year, the San Francisco 49ers. You're fading Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo. How come?
Yeah, I expect a Super Bowl hangover. I mean, that's very reductive to say that. People hear that a lot, but I don't think they're the best NFC team as the odds imply. They're tied with New Orleans in most futures odds, and I think New Orleans is a much stronger team overall when everything's considered. They went from 4-12 to 13-3. There's a lot of room to regress. That's a big gap in the middle. They could be a 8-win, 9-win, 10-win team and just have a few different bounces go against them, and that happens. Receiver issues are major. A ton of injuries in camp. They keep signing guys, and those guys get hurt too. So I don't know who's going to play receiver for them. We saw that team kind of took off when they picked up Emmanuel Sanders. I know his stats weren't great in most games besides that Saints game, but he really opened up the offense a bit for them, and you could see the difference, pre-trade and post-trade, how he helped that team. Now that he's gone, who's going to step into that place? I don't know that Brandon Ayuk is ready for prime time, going to come out the gates and be like a rookie of the year contender.
And he's injured.
And he's injured. He's a good player, and he probably is going to get better as the season goes on, as he gets worked in more. But I don't think you can expect a ton, right away. And so I don't know who's catching the ball besides Kittle and then Samuel when he's healthy. So Kinlaw, they got to replace Buckner. That he's a talented player, and that was a good pick. Who knows if he's ready to come in and take the league by storm right away? He's not going to be as good as DeForest Buckner was last year, right at the beginning. So they'll take a step back there, and then you take the regular regression that's going to come with that defense. 11 wins is a lot for this team to get again, especially in the most competitive division in football that we expect. We're top to bottom, all 4 of those teams we expect to be good.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with it, especially because, as we talked about on this podcast, 10.5 wins is a lot for any football team. I mean, expecting a football team, a professional football team, to win 11 games is asking a lot. And they're in the toughest division of football, as you point out. If the Cardinals take a step forward and the Rams are a 9+ win team again, and the Seahawks are 9+, someone in that division is gonna have to disappoint. That's the bottom line. So where do you want to make, it's sort of like, we talk about in DFS, you have to make your stands. Like you can't have Rory and DJ and Raleigh. You can't have all the good guys. You got to make a stand somewhere. So where do you want to make a stand in that division, right? And I think it's fair to take a stand on the 49ers going under. They could win 10 games and win the division, and you still hit the under. Like that's not that far-fetched. I do think that we could see them be maybe a little more, I don't know if conservative is the word on offense, but like maybe sort of try and eat clock and play defense just because they don't have all those weapons in the passing game. I don't, maybe Kyle Shanahan won't care, or maybe they just won't be as efficient early on. If they add Trent Williams, that's a big plus. I think they're a great team, but I think by and large, I am perfectly fine taking a double-digit under almost every single time.
Yeah, they added Trent Williams. He's taking over for a guy that was really good at left tackle for a long time as well.
Trent Williams is comeback player of the year.
So it's not like that offense is going to be elevated with Trent Williams. I think at best, they'll be consistent because they had a good tackle. I'm still worried a little bit about the interior of the line. We'll see if that plays out. But Shanahan's great at scheming up things, so I don't think you're going to just have Garoppolo back there getting plowed, every time. But yeah, they could win 10 games, like you said, and I think in that division that would be seen as a very successful season, even if it's not 13 wins and the number 1 seed in the NFC, and that still cashes your under. So to get under at 10.5 at flat, basically -110, I think you're getting a great value there.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. All right, finally, you're going to go to the nation's capital, and you're going to bang the drum for probably bang the drum is a bad phrase used for the Washington football team, but you do not like the over for the team formerly known as the R-Skins.
Yeah, we'll call them like the TBDs, the Washington TBDs. So under 5. Under 5.5, plus 105. It's just an absolute mess of an offseason for that organization. So this year is more about building the culture. It's not about wins. If they can get through 16 games and not have any more bad stories come out, and kind of everybody's kind of thinking positive and thinking the culture in the organization is moving in the right direction, I think that's going to be seen as a win more than anything that happens on the scoreboard. So Ron Rivera might be in and out. He's dealing with recovery, after being diagnosed with cancer. It's going to be hard for that team to handle. So we'll see how they can handle it if Del Rio has to take over as a coach here and there. Defensive line is solid. It's not enough to make up for the rest of the team's mediocrity, I think. So even defensively, I think they could be a problem. Offensively, we just don't know what they're gonna have with one good receiver and cutting their starting running back a few weeks back because of more off-field issues. So this could be the number 1 pick for me. It could be a 2-win team, a 3-win team. I think them getting to 6 would be insane.
I agree with you completely. It's asking way too much. And I like to I think that, as you point out, they can have a successful season without winning a bunch of football games. If you win 4 games, but you're competitive and Dwayne Haskins takes a step forward and Terry McLaurin looks like, the bona fide stud rookie wide receiver, and Chase Young has double-digit sacks, no one's going to say what a disastrous season for Ron Rivera. They're going to say, hey, look, this organization, somebody grabbed the wheel of the Titanic and is starting to steer it away from the iceberg, or somebody found the reverse button, is pulling the Titanic off of the iceberg. Hopefully there's not a giant hole in the bottom, or maybe we can at least patch up the giant hole, whatever analogy you want. I mean, this is not turning a speedboat around. This is a organization that has been in complete chaos and utter disaster for decades now. And they have to figure out how to turn that around. That's going to take some time. The Ron Rivera thing really stands out to me. I don't see, and we talked about this, and again, best, prayers, thoughts and prayers, best wishes to Ron Rivera. He's a good man. He's going to change the culture of that organization, I believe. I don't see how in a COVID-19 world you can be an NFL head coach who's undergoing some form of chemotherapy 5 days a week and still coaching the football team. I think it's going to be really hard for him to do that. I think we'll see a lot of Jack Del Rio. I don't think that means that I think that's a step down, and not a huge one. Jack Del Rio has won 12 games. I don't know if you remember that. He won 12 games with the Raiders. But I just think that what we've seen from Jack Del Rio with what the Redskins have leads me to believe that they'll probably be more conservative, which will probably lead to more losses. So I'm with you on the under there. I think that's sort of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and they have a week 8 bye. They could be 0-7 heading into that bye. They're home against Philly, at Arizona, at Cleveland, home against Baltimore, home against the Rams, at the Giants, which could be a win, but it's on the road, and then home against Dallas. And so you're 0-7 there. You're holding under 6. You're thinking they have to go 6-3 after the bye to beat me. That's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, it's not like we're talking about the Falcons last year who are going to magically just string together wins. I mean, this is a team that is a bunch of young players and has serious question marks all over the board. They're not going to rip off a 6-2 stretch down, in the final 8 games. It's just not going to happen. So I think those are all good calls. I don't know if I love the Texans, but maybe I don't love the Steelers, but I mean, the pedigree is there for those teams. So I can see why you're on these teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if you went 6-0 with those best bets. You
would love the Texans at 7.5 minus 110, though, right?
Yeah. It's just a missed price.
Yeah, and that's going to be available in a lot of places, 7.5 minus 110. So because that's about equivalent to 8 plus 140.
I think the Titans are going to take a step back. Does that seem fair?
Yeah. I mean, they won 9 games.
They won 9 games every year with.
Tannehill's not going to be, the most efficient quarterback we've ever seen again. So they'll have to find some improvements elsewhere to make up for whatever regression he has. So yeah, I would agree that they're going to take a step back from the win total. I don't think they're getting to the AFC title game again.
Exactly. And if they take a step back, and the Colts aren't, the freaking. I mean, I feel like I'm all in on the Colts, and I love the Colts, but I feel like people are being a little aggressive in terms of how they're assuming that the Colts will just dominate. I mean, does that seem fair? And the Jaguars are going to stink. I mean, the Texans could win 10 games, and nobody should flinch, even with that tough start. Right.
Yeah, so, you're preaching to the choir with the Texans with me.
I don't know why I'm reinforcing this pick that you already made. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll go through some more leans that RJ likes. Okay, so also those are your likes or your would be your best bets, right? Like those would be the 6 teams you would probably bet on if you went to Vegas today, right?
Yeah, if you were one to put money on some picks, those 6 would be in my portfolio for this season.
Okay. And then your leans are teams you're just sort of looking at and that you're interested in potentially evaluating. And first up are the Minnesota Vikings, under 9. Now, they traded for – there's a star here. Does that mean that they traded for Yannick Ngakoue and you're changing your mind on their under 9? If you want to hear about Yannick Ngakoue, by the way, check out the feed. Pete Prisco and I discussed Yannick being traded and Leonard Fournette being released by the Jaguars. You can get all your Jaguars coverage on that podcast feed. But where do you stand on Minnesota after the deal?
Yeah, I'm not changing my mind on the pick, the Stars, because they were in the best bet section until that trade, and they moved down to the lean section. I think there's too many losses to overcome in this offseason. It's a weak receiver core behind Thielen, who is a good receiver, but he's not going to a star number 1 receiver that's going to carry the team, and we don't know what else they're going to get. Justin Jefferson's a good rookie and was a good pick at that spot. We don't know that he's going to make an impact right away. It's just hard to tell with these rookies, and then they don't have much else behind them. So who knows what they're going to get from the passing game? Questions on the O-line. You're not a guy that lost the Rookie of the Year. That was very close call. He could have made it, Garrett Bradbury, but he just barely missed out. Questions there in the interior of the line. So who knows how that line performs, and so I don't know that offense is going to be great. So we don't know what to expect there. Ngakoue helps bolster the D-line losses. They really only had Danielle Hunter and nothing else on that defensive line, so he should help there. But at cornerback they lost 3 longtime players. They're going to have Mike Hughes and a bunch of rookies and young guys and Holton Hill and guys like that. So we don't know what we're going to get from cornerback. So talented at linebacker, talented at safety, but up the middle of the defense, at defensive tackle, and then at corner, question marks for me there. So that's a lot of question marks to think that this team's going to get to 10 wins. So my lean is under 9, minus 115, and if that trade hadn't happened, it would have been in the best bet section. And full disclosure, I bumped the Niners up to a best bet. So I did have the Vikings in there instead of the Niners, and I swapped the 2 teams.
I think I would rather fade the Vikings than the Niners, personally.
It's just that number 9, to win, you have to get to 8, and that division's pretty weak. I think anybody in that division could really win, even the Lions, and it wouldn't surprise me that much. I think anybody in that division could have a bad season and finish at the bottom, and it wouldn't surprise me that much.
Right, you saw my best bets. I like the Lions over, although now it's becoming trendy for some reason with NFL writers, so I don't know about that.
Yeah, so just obviously easier to hit under on your 10.5 pick. If you think the 49ers aren't going to be top of the top level, then try to get 8 wins for the Vikings. So I think probably you're going to push this if you bet it, which is why I moved it down just to the lean. But I would go under more than them getting to 10 wins for sure.
Yeah, there's a pathway where the 49ers are good and still cash the under. Whereas if the Vikings are good, you're probably not getting your under 9. Like they can easily get to 9-7. And there's so many variables with the Packers and the Bears and the Lions that it's a little concerning. So I'm with you. Plus, I like the Vikings. I do think defensively though, they could take a big step back. And if that happens, what then occurs if Mike Zimmer is forced to is Mike Zimmer going to let Gary Kubiak and Kirk Cousins throw a bunch if they're trailing because the defense isn't as good? I don't know. They might try and run Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, not with that supporting cast. I don't think you're going to throw a bunch when you're starting. Who would start? I think BC Johnson is the guy that would start right now, and I think he was a 7th round pick. Decent prospect coming out, but not anybody you want to rely on the offense. So maybe he breaks through out of nowhere, but it's just something you can't count on from that passing offense going into the season.
Yep. The Atlanta Falcons will be throwing though. Their over is 7.5, and you like the over. I'll take the over on Matt Ryan passing yards blindly, whatever it is.
Yeah, they were 6-2 after the bye with the coaching changes they made. They moved some assistants around, put Raheem Morris on the defensive side, which is where he belongs. I don't know why he was coaching on the offensive side. And then in that stretch of 6-2, they beat both the Saints and the 49ers on the road. 2 teams that had a combined 6 losses were the 2 best teams in the NFC last year. So this is a team that showed at the end of last year they can compete with anyone. Stability on the staff the offseason. We thought Dan Quinn might get fired before that run, but he didn't. So now that they have stability on the coaching staff, that's going to be key in this offseason, like we keep harping on. Stability also on the offensive line. They drafted 2 rookies last year. They had their ups and downs, but they were still returning all the key players on that offensive line. They might have a rookie. I believe they drafted Matt Hennessy. They might have him sub in at some point, but it should be the regular 5 starting out. So that's going to help stability at quarterback and with their top receivers, with their top 2 guys have been there. So this is what you're going to expect from this offense. They've all worked together. They should be able to take a step forward. And that defense, if it's the defense we saw in the second half last year, is going to be pretty good. I think Gurley is a question mark, but Freeman had a 3.6 yard per carry number. It's not like Gurley's going to be any worse than that. So there is room for the run game to improve if Gurley's healthy, or if he isn't, if you see more Ito Smith and Brian Hill, who knows, maybe they step it up. I think they had good yards per carry numbers last year as well. So there's a lot of upside to this team. I think they could be better than the Bucs. I think everybody's kind of said that the division's between the Saints and the Bucs. I think the Saints are on a higher level than both those teams, and it's really the Bucs and the Falcons kind of battling for that number 2 spot in a wild card.
I agree with that assessment, and maybe I've got sort of a blind spot here with the Falcons. Maybe because they burned me when I picked them to win the Super Bowl like a moron. If they don't get out to a hot start, I don't know that you can bank on it like storming back to 6-2. But again, you're just asking for 500, and you have a ton of talent on the offensive side. I'm also annoyed by the whole we have 11 former first round picks on offense. Take that. It's like one of them's Laquan Treadwell. There's Todd Gurley. Sign Leonard Fournette, now you got 12.
They're not 11 first-round picks on their rookie deals that we all expect them to take a step forward. Technically, yeah. The 49ers, after their 47th injury at receiver, they signed Tavon Austin, a former top 10 pick. It doesn't mean anything at this point.
Right, exactly. The Baltimore Ravens, you're going to fade the Ravens, take their under 11.5. God, that is an obscene number.
Yeah, it's just a lean because it's so high, but Steelers are going to be better. I think most teams in that division are going to be better. So Baltimore is probably going to take a step back. They're not going to win 14. I think your buddy John Breach had a good stat in the article that we referenced at the top of the post about teams that win 14 games. It's just so hard for them to win more than 11. So it's just statistically he made the Ravens one of his best bets, and he's banking on them to be just a typical team that regresses and only wins 10 or 11 as opposed to 12 to 14 again. So I expect them to be very good. Lamar isn't going to be the unanimous MVP good, that everybody just taking the league by storm and leading the NFL in so many categories. He's still probably going to be one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the league, but I wouldn't consider him the unanimous MVP favorite heading into the season. And so in that tougher division with that, I think 11.5 is asking a lot for Baltimore. So it's Baltimore. They have great coaches. They have a lot of stability. They could, run the table again and go to 14 wins. So it's only a lean for me, but just everything points to them coming in under 11.5.
The lowest under of the year, or second lowest under of the year, I guess. Baltimore's the second highest, or either the highest or the second highest. The Carolina Panthers under 5.5. You're getting plus money. So you're not buying the Teddy Bridgewater hype here.
Teddy's great. He was great last year in a five game audition, but we're surrounding cast here. I think he could regress some. I don't think we're going to get the 5-0 Teddy. He's going to have his ups and downs playing in that offense with that offensive line and then a young defense and a new coaching staff. It's going to take time for them to find their feet heading into this season. So I think Carolina's going to struggle. They're in a pretty good division, especially if you think that the Falcons are good like I do. It's just going to be a tough year for me. It's another year about the culture and winning and building a contender for the future. So 6 wins seems like a lot to me in that circumstance.
Yeah, they're starting all rookies on defense, and their defense was terrible last year. And I think they could be like, so I think the Jaguars and the Panthers could have good offenses. You can see my bunny ear quotes, as Breach likes to say, on youtube.com/pick6, but like put up tons of points, tons of yards, and then maybe stall out some of the red zone, but put up points, are competitive because they can score, but just can't stop anybody. And with the division the way it is, I would agree with you. I think under 5, I would loved under 5.5 a few months ago and to sort of walk myself back the other way. I don't think so. Chicago, you like the Bears over 8.
Yeah, they had a big regression in 2019. We knew it was coming. I took them on the under in 2019. Defense was great, but not elite. Offense was terrible. They still went 8-8. So it's an 8-8 team when you're getting the worst quarterback play in the league, essentially. Defense was good enough to maintain their level. They weren't historically great, but they were top 5 level great, and they could do that again. Offense has nowhere to go but up for me with getting Foles in there, or maybe Trubisky takes a step forward. Who knows? So I think worst case, if they're as bad as they were last year, they were at 8-8 last year, so you could still push. And it's a division, like we said earlier, it's a weak division, so anybody could kind of come up there. So anybody that seems like they have value in that division could be better than you expect. So 10 wins wouldn't really shock me for the Bears. I think 9-7 is a decent possibility. And at plus 110, I love taking the over.
I tend to agree with you, actually. So I just think people are sleeping on the Bears. The Bears just can't win the division. Why not? What did 2 years ago? Defense is good. Nick Foles. Yeah. I don't know. I'm in on the Lions. I'm out on everybody else, but I think the Bears, if I was picking teams to win the division, given their odds, I would almost take the Bears second behind the Lions. Like, I just want the value in what I don't think is a very good division. Also not a good division, the Dallas Cowboys over 9.5 minus 145. That is a crazy juiced up number, but I don't blame you for laying it because the Cowboys look like they could be dominant.
Yeah, if we didn't have to deal with all that juice, it would have been a like, but minus 145, I'd only put it in the lean. I think they're a double-digit win team. They could have been one last year, but, bad coaching, and they caught a bunch of bad breaks. I think what was their Pythagorean wins was something like, 10 something or maybe even 11. So 10 seems to be a lot. I love everything on offense. Defense has good depth. The coaching upgrade could be big for them. They could be a Super Bowl contender. So you're only getting them at 9.5. 10 seems pretty good locked in number for me. Minus 145. I just don't love laying that though. So it's only a lean.
Okay. I would take with the injuries the Eagles are dealing with, where they've lost Andre Dillard. We're seeing Jalen Reagor's banged up. Seems like they could start out slow. I just think the Cowboys are clear in a way the best team in that division, and there's some value to taking. I don't know if I might just take them to win the division or make the playoffs is a little too expensive. I don't mind the over here. You don't love laying the juice, especially if you're betting like 300 on the Cowboys, because then you're laying a lot of juice, or you're outlaying a lot of money that's sitting there for the full length of the season. But I think this is a 10-win team. They're going to the playoffs, and they're going to be a dangerous team. And Dak Prescott's a legitimate MVP candidate. I wouldn't have a problem with it. The problem is just the juice. That's all. And so I'm with you there. Indy under 9, plus 105. Oh, excuse me. Denver under 7.5 minus 105. You're not buying the Drew Lock hype.
Yeah, we said it. I think we said at the top that Denver was one of the most popular teams picked, in our staff picks. But 3 people took the over, 3 people took the under. Everybody has an opinion on them. My opinion is that I would go under with them. I know there's optimism, but that young offense is going to take time to gel. A lot of young pieces all over the offensive side. O-line's a major question mark to me. If they don't hold up, will Drew Lock be able to handle the pressure? I mean, he's not Kyler Murray. He's not a number 1 overall type talent pick. So I don't know that if the chips are down, he's going to carry that team. I wonder about Jarrell Casey. We think that was a great addition for them, but the Titans gave him away. So is there something there where they're expecting a step back from him in Tennessee, obviously, and they would know him better than any of us. So I just wonder about him a little bit. I'm not completely sold on their cornerback depth as well. They have good safety play. They have obviously great pass rushers, but it just isn't a complete defense to me, and it isn't. And things could go wrong on the offensive side. They invested in a running back, which I don't love doing, especially when you have other issues that you could have spent that money on. So Chiefs are going to be good. I think the other teams in that division probably have a little bit better case to get to 8 wins than the Broncos to me.
Yeah, the hype surrounding the Broncos has me completely off of them, and I'm sad because I like Denver. I like what they got going on, but there's just a blind expectation that Drew Lock's going to take a leap forward. I don't think it's the case. You got to play the Chiefs twice. The Chargers, we'll talk about them in a second. They have their own issues they're dealing with. But now I have to throw you off the podcast now because you're taking the Colts under 9 wins.
You have to throw me off the podcast again because I want to ask you, is Phillip Rivers really a big upgrade from Jacoby Brissett? Especially the Jacoby Brissett from the beginning of the year before he got hurt.
Sir, please get off this podcast. Sorry, this is a Wendy's drive-through. Yeah, I think he is. I really do, and I think I've said this a lot. I will say it again though, because you got to repeat your points in this biz. But I do think that Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers knew their time was up at the end of last year, and that they were pressing throughout the season, and that it was just a difficult spot because they knew they were leaving, and they were trying to win games and put the team on their shoulders and all that, and it didn't work out. I think Rivers is going to be more comfortable in the system. The reports out of camp are that he's gelling with T.Y. Hilton, that the offense is running faster because he knows Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni's system so well. The defense took a big upgrade with DeForest Buckner. I think Rivers is a massive upgrade over Jacoby Brissett in the second half of last year, and a pretty sizable upgrade over Jacoby Brissett in the first half of last year. Plus, they have Brissett. If Rivers is totally washed, you can always go to Brissett.
But they're not going to do that with the money they paid him. It's not like there's any kind of controversy at all. So I would have just went with Brissett. He has a year as a starter, and I would have been a little bit more sold on Indy. I don't love the move to go with Rivers. The weapons may be better in Indy, but it's dependent on youth. You got Pittman coming in as a second-round pick. You have Taylor in the backfield. Who knows if that's going to all come together. T.Y. Hilton better stay healthy if they're going to get to 10 wins. Buckner's a great audition, but I don't love the secondary either. Xavier Rhodes was pretty bad last year. So I think you'd be able to pass on the Colts if you have to win some games. Linebacker core is obviously great. But, 10 wins is a lot. I think we're underselling some of the other teams in that division. So getting plus 105 on under 9, I think the most best case scenario is they're probably going to, for wins be 10, maybe 11. But 9 seems like a good number to push on. And to get that plus 105 is why it's a lean for me.
All right, so you're making your stand on Rivers versus Billy or Brinson. I see where we go here, RJ. See how it is. The Jaguars over 4.5 wins. Pete Briscoe and I talked about it. Pete thinks they'll win 5 or 6 games, and everybody will be hyped up about Minshew, and they did really well, and they'll start to give Dave Caldwell an extension and reboot and all that, blah, 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 blah. You agree with him here?
Yeah, over 4.5, minus 130. I don't love the minus 130, obviously. This was a lean before the Ngakoue trade, before the Fournette move. I don't think the Fournette move really makes a difference. Obviously, it's a running back move, and he wasn't very good. Ngakoue, losing him is going to be a problem, but they do have some solid players on that defense. Otherwise, some youth is going to have to step up. We'll see if Jason's ready for prime time right away. But Josh Allen is an emerging player. He could be the number 1 pass rusher on that team we've seen. So I think the offense could actually be pretty solid under Jay Gruden. Minshew was solid when he was thrown into the fire. He had the whole offseason to prepare as a starter. Didn't get all the practice that you would love to see with the team, but with him and DJ Chark and what they have in the passing game, some stability on the offensive line. I mean, I don't think this is a basement level team that is the favorite for the number 1 pick. I would take them over. I would take Washington as a worse team over Jacksonville. I would probably take Carolina as a worse team than Jacksonville. And you're getting one more win on the win total than you are for Jacksonville, which is only 4.5. So this isn't a case that I'm saying Jacksonville's going to be great and make the playoffs and be a 9 or 10 win team, but over 4.5, I think they can get to 5 or 6. I think 7 is probably a best case, but I don't think that it's necessarily out of the realm of possibility. They were terrible last year. People hated them last year. They won 6 games. So I think 7 is a decent upside for them. All
right. I'm not there yet with the Jaguars, but I don't blame you for buying low on a team like that.
Just a lean.
The Rams over 8.5. I am there with you here, though. This is the disrespect involved in this is outrageous. They've never won less than 9 games with Sean McVay.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind bumping this up to the best bet section. I think the best play for the Rams, though, is to take them to make the playoffs at plus 150 or to win the division at plus 450. Plus 450, just ridiculous for how good that team was in the 2 years before last year when, they were bad last year, but they won 9 games, so they weren't really awful. So all they have to do is repeat what they did last year, and you're cashing this over 8.5 at plus 110. McVay's first 2 years were great. Still a lot of talent on defense, though. Linebacker is weak, but you got Aaron Donald, Brockers, Ramsey, good safety play. So the players are there on defense, even if you have, some issues in certain places. The offense is still led by McVay. He can coach you to a great offensive scheme with Goff. He's going to come back with some new wrinkles because he's a good offensive mind, and that team should come out and surprise people. I think 10 wins is probably a likely scenario for them. I think they could win the division with 11 or 12, and it wouldn't shock me considering how good they were in 2017 and 18. And 8.5 plus 110 is just giving them no respect at all.
Okay. The Rams. I like that bet. Love them to make the playoffs. I'm with you. That was one of my best make the playoffs bets. The Saints over 10.5. Don't see you take a lean towards an over with double digits often, RJ, but I can't say I blame you with this one. It feels like the Saints are a little, and you mentioned this references earlier when we talking about the Panthers in the Falcons. It does feel like the Saints are maybe a little bit undervalued in the market, but it's essentially just a Tom Brady factor.
Yeah, the most complete team in the NFC, 10.5 minus 110 isn't that big a price to me to pay for that. But because anything can happen, and 10.5 is such a big number, it's only a lean instead of a like. Figure this is Brees' last year. Team's going to be motivated to get him out on top. Give him an Elway moment and get him to the Super Bowl. This team was good enough to get to the Super Bowl for the last 3 years to me, and just they had some bad breaks, they had some bad officiating calls, and it wouldn't shock me to see them in the Super Bowl any of those 3 years. So I think they could do it this year. I think they're the best team in the NFC. Getting 10.5 at a flat rate of minus 110 is a pretty good bet for me.
Okay. And finally, the last lean, the New York Giants under 6.
Under 6 at plus 100. It would have been a like, but I threw Washington up at the top, and I don't like taking both those teams to go under if you're putting money on both of them. But I'm fading a new coaching staff in year one. It's unclear what we're going to get from Joe Judge. Offensive line is an issue.
You're going to get discipline.
Yeah. We saw that with Matt Patricia, how that worked out. Offensive line is an issue. Could impair, Jones's development if the offensive line doesn't come together after Solder opts out. So they could be starting 2 rookies at tackle. We'll see how that works. Secondary could get roasted with their losses. They weren't good to begin with. So now it's just James Bradbury, and good luck after that. So there's too many problems with this team to think that they're going to get to 7 wins, and you can get, even odds on getting under 6 when the likely scenario is a push. I think is a good scenario for you there.
Okay. Let's quickly run through your stayaways. Obviously, it's the rest of the teams in the NFL. But what you don't like the Arizona over 7? Is that the juice or the?
Yeah, juice is minus 130. It's just a good division. Are we going to see 8 wins from every single team in that division? It seems like a lot to ask. And I think I like the other 3 teams better than Arizona, just, purely looking at the team strength. So if I was going to go with one pick, I'd go under and get that plus 110, but 7 seems to be likely for me. And I do like Arizona. I like where they're going, but it's just a lot to ask.
The Chargers you have on here as the under 7.5 plus 120. I bring that up because that under seems surprisingly low. I don't think people are understanding the downside that the Los Angeles Chargers have in 2020, and it's pretty immense. Like, I think they're a decent value to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft, to be perfectly frank. And Darwin James, by the way, as we were recording this, the Chargers issued an update where they said Darwin James suffered a right knee injury. There's no timetable for his return. We'll have an update later. That is ominous and vague and concerning. And if Darwin James is out, that defense takes a massive hit.
Yeah, if you're taking the over on the Chargers or anything positive on the Chargers, you're expecting that defense to be elite. And with the talent in place, it could. But you lose a big piece like James and the cracks starting to come. There's a massive downside for this. This isn't going to be a case where the team is bad and then it rallies to get to 8 wins at the end of the season. Because if they're bad, Justin Herbert goes under center. They see what they get from him, and then you have no chance of winning because he's not going to be ready to play in year 1. So it's just that, to me, I think the under is a better play there, especially with the James injury. But I wanted to be positive on the Chargers because that defense is so good. I just decided to stay away from it completely.
Yeah, I want to believe in them too. And then I don't love Denver this year, and I don't love Oakland, so I could see a path where they get to the wins. The fact that Vegas has them at 7.5, man, that's a red flag. Like that means that they don't think that this team is going to come out and win. Obviously, then that they're a 10-win playoff caliber team.
Yeah, well, they won 5 last year, so you could see why you don't want to get them too high. So 7.5 seems about right if you want to be positive on the Chargers. You think you're going to get some money on them going 8-8, but you don't want to go any higher than that.
You were too scared to fade Bill Belichick at minus 145. The Patriots under 9.5. I don't blame you. I assume that's basically there's a lot of unknowns about them. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time, and you have to lay minus like 145 to like assume that he'll just win 9 games. Conversely, the Dolphins under 6. It's something I would definitely be interested in. I'm surprised you actually didn't have that a little bit higher.
I kind of like the Dolphins. I wanted to buy into them a little more. I think Flores did a good job in his first year. They had some highlight. They were terrible in the first half of the season, and we know that. Some of that was Rosen going in and out of the lineup, but they had some positives to take away. I mean, they beat a New England team that needed a win at the end of the season. So I like where Flores is going with that team. I like what they did on the defensive side. I think they could be pretty good, but they're adding a lot of new pieces in this offseason. We don't know how fast they're going to come out of the gate with that, and there's still some issues on the offensive line. So I did want to get them to 7 wins. I think if I could get the 5.5 number with a little bit more juice, I might go the over. But 6, getting to 7 is a little bit loud for me. So I would, if I was going to pick it, I would go under. But I don't have a strong play on them either way.
Okay. Detroit involved the juice, or what was the deal with that?
Yeah, just a lot of juice for Detroit. I think they can win the division. I think if you want to take a Detroit bet, I took them to win the division last year, and it looked pretty solid, halfway through the season before Stafford's injury, because they were a competitive team. They could have easily been, I think you've brought it up, 5-0, but they had a few bad bounces. Yeah. So they have some positives to take away. I would play them to win the division if you're going to play a Detroit bet, but I wouldn't lay -145 because it seems like they could be very highly variable team where they could win 9 games or 10 games, win the division. They could win 3 games and Patricia could be fired. We just don't know.
Okay. Anything else that stands out to you from these stayaways that you would want to let the world know about?
Yeah, I wanted to be on, make the Packers a little higher as a under 9 -120, but I just don't know how the division's going to go, and I don't think you can really be sold on both Packers and Vikings going under. Dubin brought up a good point in his picks for playoffs. He did a split bet on Packers and Vikings both to miss the playoffs at +120, just because the rest of the NFC is really solid, and taking both those teams to make the playoffs, even when you have 3 wild cards, there's just too many other good teams. So if you want to do a split bet on both those teams to miss the playoffs at +120, you're probably going to make some money because one's probably going
to make 20 cents or $20, 20 cents.
Yeah, and if
there's a good chance you could double down.
Right. If the Bears take a step up, or if the Lions are, like we just said, they're hit their ceiling, they could both miss the playoffs, and all of a sudden you're cashing twice your bet.
Yeah. All right. I like that. Okay. RJ White at RJ White 1 on Twitter. Go to sportsline.com. Use promo code White. You will get the first month for free. You also get CBS All Access with your Sportsline subscription. So that's every NFL game that's on CBS for the same price. Plus you get Blue Bloods. And don't sleep on Frazier. You get Frazier.
All the new Star Trek series.
I'm joking around. CBS All Access is awesome. You also get to watch Champions League. This is the only place to watch all the Champions League games. So go to sportsline.com. Use promo code White. You get your first month for $1, and you get CBS All Access included in the login. It's a great deal, and you get RJ's picks all season long. You'll be crushing it as he usually does. And like Pete Prisco, we'll be doing a Friday pick show with us every single week. Pretty excited, RJ.
I am too. Should be fun. We'll see. We'll see if we can do better. I think you beat us both last year.
That means that things went south for y'all.
Yeah, so we'll see if me and P can get our games together and be picking closer to the 54, 55%, which I like to try to aim for and have been at in past years. I think I was 51 or 50% on the podcast. So
yeah, we'll get better this year. All right. Thanks as always, RJ. Talk to you soon, buddy.